I got an interest, so I have to leave. So I'll hand it over to Anthony.
I'll just bring in the monitoring officer at that point.
I'll explain, and then perhaps I'll come to apologies as well. Yes, I've had a discussion with the leader beforehand, so he's aware. Obviously, the nature of the code is deciding where there are interests. The leader, as the company director of the SRS-BS, a trading company, has a prejudicial interest. It happened when Cabinet considered in February whether Blaenau Gwent would join the SRS. Therefore, he has to be outside the chamber. Therefore, Councillor Hunt, as Deputy Leader, would you chair? But I think if we go on with the interests, I think we've had a conversation as well. But as you're the council representative on the SRS Public, which is not a separate organisation, that is only a personal interest. You're able to stay here and chair the meeting. Is that clear to members? It's yes.
Clear to me, and I therefore declare that personal interest and are happy to take over as chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think we missed the apologies out. I think Rachel has got an apology to give.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor David Daniels.
Okay, at that point, can I bring in Matt Lewis then? Give the report.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really positive to be back so quickly after the last visit with the Blaenau Gwent introduction to talk about another partner wishing to join the SRS. So I'll start with the paper. I won't go through all the appendices because I'll work on the assumption that they've been kind of worked through and looked through. But I will talk through the main points on the cover paper that I submitted. So as I said, this is a paper to seek permission. The recommendation is to seek permission from each cabinet to submit Newport as a partner into the SRS. So the same paper will be going to 3 separate cabinets this week. I'm doing Blaenau Gwent on Wednesday, and I've got Monmouthshire on Friday. So it's the exact same papers going to all 3 organisations to make sure it's a consistent message across all 3. So the paper talks about the SRS background, our strategy. Our strategy was signed off by all existing partner organisations back in January of 2016. So each organisation that joins the SRS from that point forward, join it on the basis of they are signing up to that strategy. If it was something different, then it would become unworkable and there'd be no consistency across the partners. So it talks about the main aims of our strategy, the main objectives that we've got. The important part for me there is we put those in there because we want each organisation to make sure they're signed up to those aims and objectives. That's really important for us. If we move on to section 5 in that paper, this starts then to describe the review process that Newport Council have been through to make their decision. So the first part is an IT service review that Newport City Council took back in March 2016. As part of that review, there were a number of scrutiny meetings, there were visits from Newport City Council members and senior officers to the SRS in Blenavon. We actually housed their scrutiny meeting in the boardroom in Blenavon for one of the events as well, so they could run through their scrutiny panel and ask us questions while they were there. So that service review process came up to a conclusion that they need to look at something different for their IT function. And there was a preferred option that came out of that process, which was for them to talk to the SRS to look at what a partnership could look like and how it would operate. Section 6 then talks about the Newport City Council business case itself. The business case was conducted by an external company. That provides the independence, very similar to the way we did with Blaenau Gwent. So it gives council members and the organisation themselves that kind of independent view as to whether this is a good thing or a bad thing to do. The SRS always recommends this because we don't want to be part of telling them that they should do this. It needs to be through an independent process, so there's huge benefit in us in working with external companies to do that. So that business case process, the detail is in Appendix 1, the full business case, which is a kind of 60-70 page document. The business case process used was the Welsh Government 5-case model. We used that model in Blaenau Gwent and it worked very well for us. and everything we learned from the Blaenau Gwent business case, the process and how we worked through it, that was applied to the Newport business case as we did that. And each time we do it, we'll learn and we'll improve the next time again. So it went through the Welsh business case, the Welsh Government 5-case business case model. This section 6.1 talks about the numbers of staff involved. So there's 32 members of staff. There are more roles. There are only 32 named members of staff because that's what's left in Newport at the moment. There's between 42 and 45 roles in scope, depending on which services we bring across, but there are only 32 named members of staff as employees on the payroll, if you like. So what that brings with it is opportunities for existing SRS members of staff and for existing Newport members of staff in other roles that are currently being filled, possibly by temporary staff in Newport, or roles that are genuinely vacant that come across as part of the transfer. It talks about the numbers of users supported, the number of schools, and the important part is that we're only bringing together things that we all do. So we're not taking on a group of services that we don't currently have people doing, and we're not providing things to Newport that we don't currently do. So the whole point of the business case, exactly the same as Blaenau Gwent, it's a culmination, if you like, of everything we do and the similarities in Newport. So it's our core service. We're not expanding our service catalogue. We're not doing something different, so there's no kind of risk around new things, if you like. So the process that went through then, that came to the SRS Public Board in September as a formal request from Newport City Council to join the SRS. So the Public Board was attended by their SRO for the project, Rhys Cornwall. Rhys came, presented to the SRS Public Board a document which was simply, we'd like to join the SRS, and we've been through a business case process, and these are the reasons why we think this would be a good match. In October, in Section 7, the SRS then took that business case. We worked through what we thought were the benefits, any possible disbenefits, any risks. We did a SWOT analysis with a couple of board members, and we brought that back to the board. Again, that's included in this document in Appendix 2. And it's a full, if you like, the appendix is all the weaknesses and threats. So the document doesn't show all the kind of positives. It was just focusing on what risks will this bring to the SRS if this were to be the case. So we tried to highlight the positives in the paper, but all the kind of weaknesses and threats it brings with it, they're in Appendix 2 in that document. So between October and November public boards, what we did was we worked that document back and forth with Rhys in Newport and with the IT function in Newport. And what came back to the November Public Board was, if you like, a final statement from us and from Newport as to these were all the things that were identified, this is how we're going to mitigate them, and this is the responsible person for resolving that issue. I think what we came down to at the November Board were 3 quite minor issues that were resolved very quickly then outside of the meeting. So there's nothing overhanging this. There's nothing that we think poses a great risk to our organisation or to Newport City Council as a result of doing this. Section 8 then talks about some of the benefits for the SRS. We know it's within our strategy. We know these are the kind of things we aim for in our strategy, bringing on new public sector partners. We know how we know how we will deal with this from a staffing perspective. We know how our organisation needs to change and transform to be able to service multiple organisations. We've put those papers through our public board. The public board are comfortable that we know when we split roles and when we expand things at what point in time. And because we've been working in Newport, providing a management service for the past 12 months roughly, the way that the organisation works, the things that we've put in place since we've been there, it lines it up well for an introduction into the SRS come April time. So we've been trying to almost shape some of the things that happen down there as a result of us being involved to make this work much more effectively when it does come together, if that's the decision that's made. Section 9 talks about benefits for existing partners. So we know what the benefits are to the SRS, and then individual councils and the Police and Crime Commissioner will want to know what those benefits are for them as individual organisations. So the section talks about that. There are benefits around collaboration. We know already when we look at departments within Torfaen, we know that there are collaborations between public planning protection, I think, with Blaenau Gwent now. So there are more and more collaborative efforts growing out of departments outside of the SRS. We're not forcing those collaborations. They are organically growing, if you like. And by doing this, we are creating the technology organisation that can enable those collaborations. So the same for Newport. If this makes it much easier and much simpler if Newport were to collaborate on something with Torfaen, with Monmouthshire, with Gwent Police. And the more organisations we grow, and I guess the larger footprint we've got across the Gwent region, that seems to be a kind of nice footprint for us to work on. Gwent Police, Gwent region, 5 local authorities in the Gwent region, and again, we could start to look at what kind of work and collaboration we could have with Aneurin and Bevan as well. And the rest of the, there's some financial benefit in doing this. There is an amount that comes across to the SRS to pay for the management layer of the organisation. So if you think about me as an example, I'm currently split 4 ways from a charging mechanism. When Newport come in, I'll be then split 5 ways. The same goes for all of the management team at the SRS. So at the end of it, a number of around 100k falls out of this, which is available as surplus, if you like, that the organisations can then kind of take back as a saving if they wish to. It's not a straight 25-25-25 split. It's based on the investment that each organisation makes, so it's not a straight 4-way split of money back. It's slightly different, but still, nevertheless, it's an opportunity to reduce the cost of what we do back to you as organisations. And again, as part of this, we will have an even bigger pool of people. We'll have lots more different skills coming from Newport to work in the SRS. And like any collaboration, I guess, anyone we've seen over the past, there are people down there with skills that we don't have. There are people down there with more experience in certain things that we've got, and there are people with less experience. So again, it's a benefit both ways. This isn't just a benefit to Newport or a benefit to the SRS. This is, as I said, it's really in line with our strategy, and we're bringing in a group of people that have different skills to us, have different experiences, and will add to what we've already got. So we'll be up to an organisation of around 205, 210, with a £15 million budget if Newport were to come in. We're looking at a possible introduction of April 1st, 2017. That's the recommended transfer date for staff at this moment in time. There are a number of reasons for that date being the date it is. Financial, people perspective, like some of the simpler ones being that it's just a nice time from a tax perspective for individuals to do it. From a service and budgeting perspective as well for us, it's much simpler to manage from an April 1st going forward than it is to do something mid-December or mid-January. And again, that decision was taken through the board and made by the board, so it was in total coordination with the board. Section 10 then is all the people we consulted with during this process, and there were a lot of consultations. I walked through the process of public board meetings, it's been through lots of scrutiny meetings. So a lot of people have been involved with this, external and internal. And we think what we've got, again, is a really solid, robust business case document, which gives all of the detail around why this is a good thing and why we should be doing it. Section 11 then is around the risks. All of those have been identified as part of the SWOT analysis work we did, which is in the due diligence document, and we will track that throughout the transition as we go as well. We aim to follow the same process we did with Blaenau Gwent. I think when we were asked by the board very early on, we will know whether this is achievable or not by the kind of waves that the Blaenau Gwent transition leaves within the organisations. When they made that statement, we had already introduced Blaenau Gwent into the SRS as an organisation, so we'd already put the staff together. Just by the fact that the board hadn't kind of recognised, or the organisations hadn't felt any degradation of service, the organisations hadn't felt any loss of staff or loss of people that they normally see, was kind of a testament to the smooth nature that the project team have brought Blaenau Gwent into the organisation. So we're fully expecting Newport to be the same again, but we'll have to keep an eye on to make sure that there's no degradation of service or kind of staff moves around the place that doesn't cause problems for us. Section 12 then, on the actions to be taken following these set of cabinet meetings this week. All the way through the business case work, we've talked to the board about the sooner the decision can be made, the sooner staff can be told in Newport, because what we've got is a group of staff who've got a bit of uncertainty. So we've got 158 people in Blanavon that have been through this before, that know what to expect and understand the process. But we've got 32 people down in Newport who, this is new, it's uncertain, they don't know where they're going to be based tomorrow, they don't know where they're going to, what roles they're going to be performing, they don't know what the match looks like. So the sooner we can make the decision and start consulting with staff, the sooner we can start to allay their concerns, and they will quickly start to realise that this doesn't mean they're going to be losing their job, or it doesn't mean they're going to be doing something entirely different, or we're not going to be sending them to Wrexham tomorrow. So I think the sooner we can do this kind of stuff, the much better it will be for staff in Newport specifically. So the actions to be taken following this: formally respond to Newport Council with whatever the result is out of these cabinet meetings, and then look at the implementation plans for integration and the TUPE transfer of staff. So the progress at the moment on the TUPE transfer of staff is that we would be looking to, based on staff consultation and staff view, there's an opportunity to harmonise staff on day one of the process as well. So that would only be done if that is what staff in Newport want. It's not going to be something that's mandated from this side at all. We were asked that quite early on by Newport staff and by Newport, so it's something that we would be happy to consider if it were possible. The final section then, section 13, is the monitoring and evaluation of this going forward. As we've done with the Blaenau Gwent introduction, Newport would then have a seat on the SRS board, as Blaenau Gwent do now, and we would be monitoring SLAs through the performance board, performance to the organisations, again, as we do now through our performance board. So if there were any dips in service, if there were any project deviations or whatever, we'd pick those up very quickly through the existing meeting and performance processes within the SRS. So that's the paper. The business case and the due diligence documents are both attached, quite lengthy documents in places, some of it quite technical, but I'm more than happy to take any questions on the paper, the business case, or the due diligence report.
Okay, so thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt before I come in? Gunara?
Yes, can I just ask a question? It's about staff, really. Should we agree this afternoon? How soon is the process going to take now for staff to be reassured about their future?
As soon as possible for me. So we've had some informal meetings with staff over the last few weeks. Those informal meetings are just really to describe how the Blaenau Gwent transition worked, or the possible things that they could be doing when they come to us, but it doesn't really give them any certainty, it doesn't give them definitive answers. So what Tina Hume in Torfaen is committed to is that if decisions this week are that we would like them to join, then early in January we'll sit down with them and start that formal consultation process, recognising that the sooner we do it, then the less concerned people will be. But I think at least the informal, and I sat through some of the informal sessions, at least what that's done is allay people's concerns before Christmas, and that was kind of quite important for me. I didn't want people sitting through Christmas worrying about, am I still going to have a job in April? Or so I think we've at least allayed those concerns.
Yes, John?
Yeah. I'm very happy with the report. I've got no problem at all with the report. On the practicalities of the situation, you're talking about a staffing complement of about 210. Can you accommodate those up at Blaenau?
That's a good question. Answer is no. The difference, one of the differences with the Blaenau Gwent and the Newport business case is Blaenau Gwent didn't want to keep an IT location in Blaenau Gwent. Blaenavon is probably closer to some of the locations in Blaenau Gwent than where they previously were in the centre of Abervale. So the Blaenau Gwent one was very much, we want to transfer all of our people and our service to Blaenavon, lock, stock and barrel, which we did in our case. The Newport one is slightly different. Because Blaenavon is that much further away from Newport city centre and kind of the outreaches of Newport than Blaenavon is, we will be keeping a Newport office as part of this. So this will be one of the tests for us, I guess. We will be a multi-site organisation for the first time since we've been set up. So we've got some kind of learning to do and some things we need to make happen to become a multi-site organisation. And we will have distributed teams across those locations as well. So it's possible that we could have support services in 2 locations. And I guess we've got to try and pick up how we manage some of that. But there will definitely still be a Newport location, there will be a Blaenavon location. What we've told staff, which is right, is everybody's job description will say Blaenavon as the base location, but they will be deployed wherever they're needed. Maybe you end up working 4 days. If you're in Newport now, you could still maybe work 4 or 5 days in Newport and just come back for the kind of key planning meetings with us. But that will be worked through after we agree the transfer will happen.
Any further questions? No, well, thank you, Matt, for the report. I think it's certainly a vote of confidence in you, Newport having worked with you, and in the SOS as a whole, really. So I think that's something we should welcome. This is obviously good for finances going forward, and also fits very much in with the public services reform agenda. The idea to collaborate and to spread collaborations. The benefits spelt out in section 9 there. It's not just savings, also sort of cost avoidance, efficiency, resilience, and hopefully a centre of excellence that's developing at the SRS for these things going forward. I think it's also a very good point that we've learnt and have put in place a very sound process. It's not just been assumed in this. You can tell from the report. It's not just been assumed that Newport joining would be a good thing, but all the risks have been analysed and the due diligence has been done and the business case worked up. So I very much welcome the report. And unless anyone else has any questions, I'd like to move the recommendations at point 12.
Second that.
Everyone in favour? Great. Thank you very much, Matt. And that's meeting to close.